representing Franchise Secrets, Eric Von Horn.
If you're not a part of the Franchise Secrets Facebook group, what are you waiting for? It's franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. I cannot believe how valuable this group turned out to be. When someone asks a question, the feedback is honest, authentic, very helpful, and it's from multiple perspectives. If you're not sure that you're getting the most accurate information about franchising, then check out the largest, most helpful Facebook group in all of franchising. Whether you're a Z, a Zor, a buyer, or investor, join our free Facebook group at franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. Welcome to the Franchise Secrets podcast. Eric Van Horn here today with David Schuck. Now, David's made a successful career as a franchisee, as a multi-unit, multi-brand franchisee from Greensboro, North Carolina, graduating from the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, where he played basketball for the Spartans and went on to play professional basketball in Spain. David decided to get into the franchise business where he opened and acquired 17 Liberty Tax franchises. Looking for a new challenge, he decided to expand into the Club Pilates brand. His passion for that brand led him to become the largest Club Pilates franchisee. His mission statement is to impact the lives of people we touch. I feel that Spartan Fitness Holdings is a great vehicle to make that mission statement a reality. David lives in Nashville, Tennessee now with his wife, Jamie, and 3 kids, Tanner, Mason, and Finley. He loves all things sports, reading, and rotating new hobbies. David, welcome back to the show, man.
Thanks a lot, Eric. Glad to be here and can't wait to have a great combo.
Well, let's start out with important stuff. What are new hobbies? What are the new things that you've discovered, let's just say since COVID? I know you're expanding businesses rapidly, but is there anything that you've taken up?
So it's interesting. Yes. It's interesting you say rotate. So I'm actually picking up an old hobby that I let go dormant for a while. So just moved to Nashville. So I'm back into trying to relearn how to play the guitar. So I'm having a blast doing that and finding excuses to go buy a guitar here and there. So I've got quite the collection. The other new hobby that I have is a little weird, but I've started to collect Jordans. So the basketball shoes.
Hey, dude, even from South Dakota, I even know what Jordans are. I remember when they came out with the first Jordan.
Yep. I remember all the kids when I was in middle school and high school wearing them and thinking, I don't need those. But those shoes that they were wearing back then are probably worth ridiculous amounts of money right now. The collection's still small, but it's up to about 12. So, and one of the things is I have large shoe size. So I wear either a 16 or 17.
No way.
So the way I rationalize it is this is one of the few types of shoes that I can get in those sizes. Now I can't go to a Dick's Sporting Goods or, an Academy and buy shoes off the shelf. So I have to order online and Jordans so far have had a good choice of sizes.
What's the most expensive Jordan that you've purchased?
Yeah, I try to stay under $500 a pair. So I don't want to. You can go crazy, but I don't. I'll just keep finding a different pair to buy if I see some that are too much over that.
Well, before we get into how you brought private equity in as a franchisee into a brand that has not had any private equity into it, I want to talk about a hobby that I am starting to take up. Similar to you, it's something that I used to do in high school and in college, and recently went to the sporting goods store and spent a boatload of money to acquire new rock climbing gear. So I got the shoes, the harness, and all the goods because a doctor friend of mine here is really good at rock climbing. He's new to town, doesn't have a lot of friends yet. And so he's going to take me around, and our goal is to climb Devil's Tower next year. So if you don't know what Devil's Tower is, check it out. It's a multi-pitch climb. And that's the goal, is to be able to do enough rock climbing over the next year to be able to climb Devil's Tower. And that should be fun. So we'll see if it actually happens. It will happen. It will happen.
Pretty crazy. And there's an awesome movie back in the 80s with Devil's Tower in it.
Do you remember the name?
I remember the tone.
Well, Caleb's here. Caleb probably remembers it. Caleb, what's the movie? It's like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Am I right on that?
Yeah, something like that. But it was the aliens or whatever they were giving that sort of ringtone is what I think of it now.
Well, what actually happened with Devil's Tower, some people think it's a volcano neck, but actually it was a massive bear that were trying to get the Native Americans on top of this big mountain, and they clawed it all the way. And then the big bear came over into South Dakota, died. And now that's a mountain that is covered in the shape of a massive bear. So that's the true story of Devil's Tower, although some people do think it's a volcano neck.
Yeah.
But let's talk about different stuff now. Let's talk about franchising. So you and I grew up in the same brand, Liberty Tax, and there was amazing people that came out of that brand that are friends of ours today that are doing very cool things within franchising. Most people know of Brian Holmes with Franchise Ramp. Big shout out to Brian and his crew over there. He's also a Club Pilates franchisee. Actually, Adrian, his wife, is a Club Pilates franchisee. We'll give her all the credit for that. But the point of all that is we started in this franchise system. There's a lot of people that had success there and worked for it that came out of that and started into new brands. And you're one of those. So why don't we start there? Going from one brand that you had 17 locations of into a new brand, talk about that transition, and then we'll eventually get to how you attracted private equity money to help you grow as a franchisee in a brand that's never experienced that before.
Cool. So yeah, the transition from Liberty to a new brand, I really was at a stage, it had been about 10 years into my Liberty journey. And I was at a point where I wanted to find another way to grow, right? I didn't feel at that time there was a change in leadership with the franchisor, and so when I was thinking about the next phase and the next growth phase for me, what the vision would look like, chose to look outward and say, all right, what else is there, and let's do some research and explore. And actually, it's funny you mentioned Brian. We were probably talking on a couple of times a week basis and talking about a lot of the same things. What's the next thing? What are some concepts you're hearing about? He actually called me up and said, hey, here's something that's just starting to franchise. I think it'd be worth our time to look at it. And he said, I'm going out to the Discovery Day here in a couple of weeks. You got to figure out a way to get out here. And I had always been interested in fitness. Actually, before I got into Liberty Tax, I looked at Snap Fitness as a concept. At the same time I was looking for Liberty, obviously I chose Liberty, but I always liked the idea of fitness, and coming from a background of loving sports and being fit and physically active, it always was an attractive type concept for me. So I flew out to California, did the Discovery Day Dog and Pony Show, and it really resonated with me. It was a simple business model. The product of Pilates is obviously been around for a long time, and it works. It's proven to work. It gives results for folks, which is really important when you talk fitness. One of the things that it takes for a fitness concept to have legs and really work is, it needs to produce results, right? You need to resonate with your target audience, who your target customers are. And so continue to do more research, but really, really fell in love with the idea of getting into this brand at the very early stages. And, here we are 5 years later. And it was a great decision. It was a great decision, looking back.
Let's talk about that. Because at Liberty didn't feel like an early stage brand when I first got into it, which was before you did. And then looking back, it really was early stage. When you got into Club Pilates, it was an early stage brand. It was kind of a brand that went from a founder to Anthony, who was putting time and effort and had background in that, into the brand, which eventually exploded that brand. So when you first had the opportunity to get into Club Pilates, it was wide open. You had Raleigh. Like most people don't get the chance to buy Raleigh and in a franchise brand, because it's one of the first ones that sell out, along with Denver and Nashville and a handful of other places. So you had the opportunity for wide open turf. And at some point in a brand, when it's more mature, 5 years later, many franchises open, there's not a lot of wide open territory. So can you compare and contrast for the person that has never really gone through that growth in a franchise? Maybe they're at the early stage, and they wish they were at the later stage. There's more track record. Or maybe they're at the later stage in a brand and they wish they were in early stage because they get better territory. You've grown in both of those stages. So can you speak to that?
Yeah. And by the way, let's back up. I think you had a big part in helping for Club Pilates to really take off. Obviously, Club Pilates stands on its own as a concept and what it does in a brand. But I do think you had a big impact early on in getting the word out. And my goodness, you have a good name among most of the franchisees, because you sold us all the franchise. So so I think what you're asking is to talk about pros and cons of getting into a brand early on and versus maybe a wait and see attitude. I don't think there is a right answer. I know one of the thoughts when I got into Club Pilates was, it was evident that, all right, there is some risk involved because it is so new. There was not the track record. I remember validating, and that was really tough because at the time most of the units were in California and Arizona. And I had this simple thought that I didn't want to validate out of California, Arizona. I wanted to validate in, other areas that might be more comparable to the East Coast and, North Carolina. Right or wrong, that thought, but I did want to make sure I validated outside of California and Arizona. And that was really tough. So I remember talking to a nice guy in Carmel, Indiana. I talked to a nice lady in East Memphis. And I think after I hung up with that call, I said, all right, Carmel, Indiana, East Memphis, they're ecstatic. They're loving their journey. They're having good results and things are going well. I think that helped calm some of my nerves about, is Pilates something that would gain traction in North Carolina? But there's always a risk, and I guess it's a give and take, right? So the give would be you're taking on more risk. The pro to it would be you have more opportunity to get the first choice in areas, right? Mm-hmm. And so that was something that I feel very fortunate that I had a chance to be connected with Club Pilates early on, made the move. I will tell you, even after Club Pilates sort of took off and was pretty consistently, countrywide, nationwide, putting up really good unit level numbers. And I obviously was on the inside and knew what my numbers were. So I was loving the idea of growing. I went to Dallas and I was able to make an acquisition, and I've been able to, just in the last 2 years, I've been able to open 5 new studios. So there's the idea that, you can miss the boat, but, I still believe there's still opportunity in Club Pilates to develop new. Now it's a lot harder and a lot less available turf. It's not the Wild Wild West like it was 5 years ago, but in any concept, I think there's always those first movers. But then, if you miss that and want to wait and see to get more results and more validation, I don't think that would ever keep you from being able to be successful in a brand.
When you say it's a lot harder to open up a new store now, you mean harder to find good territory that you think would be a good store, or
No.
are you saying harder in other ways?
Yeah, I'm saying harder, and you can't just throw a dart against a map of the US and
Yep.
feel confident that you can have whatever you want, right?
Yes.
So, but no, by no means. I mean, I just signed a development agreement with Club Pilates to develop 15 units over the next 5 years. So, and that's all undeveloped areas right now. So there is opportunity, and I would imagine a lot of concepts. There's opportunity to continue growing, even if you sort of feel like, man, has this been overdeveloped? More than likely, there's opportunity.
That's a good point. Cause I remember early on, John Hewitt told me, it's like, Eric, just get these certain territories. You don't need to buy a bunch more because there's going to be plenty of time to get really good areas later on or buy out existing franchisees. And I didn't believe him. In classic Liberty, I thought I knew better and I bought more. And then sure enough, there was always opportunity. My 10 years there was always opportunity to buy more, whether it was a franchisee that had turf or territory that they didn't want anymore, that was solid, or buying out existing locations. And I see that in a lot of different brands right now, especially, from service-based to fitness to food, everything. There's always, with the exception of just a few, very special brands that are on fire right now, there's so much opportunity. So if you had to choose, would you choose to buy an existing location and have, if you had 5 locations that you were going to open, would you choose to start them from scratch or would you choose to buy out existing?
Great question. I think so. I'll try and give you a vague answer to a direct question. How about that?
Oh, I knew that was coming, and I'm very good at follow-up questions too. So everyone
Yeah,
listening, we'll see how this goes.
I really enjoy both, and there's really is benefits and advantages to both of these, strategies. And actually, the current strategy I'm doing is exactly it, using both. So it's acquiring open existing studios, but then building new around, right? So I believe strongly in both. I think opening new and having opportunity to find that new spot, besides the ability to get a higher return on your investment, because you're spending a lot less for a new unit and a new territory. I think that's really cool. I've always enjoyed the site selection process. I've always enjoyed sort of hunting, getting in the car and going and looking for great locations. It's like buying a new house, right? You have that great feeling of like, okay, what's next? Oh, let's look at this shopping center, and sort of visualizing what it could be and all that stuff. So that is always very rewarding to develop something from the ground up. On the other hand, acquiring units has been really a really fun thing to do. It's an entirely different ball game. It's instead of worrying about site selection and negotiating with landlords and lease negotiating, it is, getting sourcing people that want to sell and exit and trying to come to what you find is a fair price, a fair valuation, a fair deal. And then there's a lot of interesting things that happen once the deal is closed. And, how do you onboard existing staff into your current existing culture? How do you onboard, existing studios, or in any business, I would imagine, into your existing processes? How do you implement change? How do you do all this without creating more problems than you signed up for? So I absolutely love doing both of those. I don't know that I could pick right off for you. If I had 5, it'd probably be 3 one way and 2 the other, and it depends what day of the week, probably which one gets the 3.
All right, you win. And part of it is there's just so many there's nuances to all of it. If you're taking over an underperforming asset, an underperforming location, that comes with its own set of challenges. Or if you have a location that isn't the greatest from a site selection standpoint, that's going to have its different set of challenges. And then you don't get to grow your employees from day one or your team members. You are inheriting certain team members. So all of that could be really good or not. And it's going to be a mix of everything. So, all right, you win that round. We'll see if I can, get you some other way. So, let's go into, when did you engage with the private equity company that you're with now? Because there's a lot of franchisees out there that they wish they could attract private equity to help them grow. So give us a sense of the stage that you were at, and then how did that happen?
Yeah. So it's something that, I set a vision for what I wanted to do on a personal level, both personally and in business. And the vision is to create a multi-brand, multi-unit franchise platform that just is awesome. And I put a number to it. It's I want to create $100 million company in that vertical, those verticals. But the biggest idea around my entire vision was to be able to do something bigger than myself, to be able to impact people that I might not even be individually connected with, and also, really have some fun and be challenged and wake up and be a little uncomfortable and have something to really go at and feel like I have a purpose in what I'm spending my time doing, right? And so that was the genesis of it all. As far as getting connected with private equity, it was starting in 2019 when I started acquiring other Club Pilates and really scaling. I started going to conferences. I actually went to several in Las Vegas, finance and growth conferences, just started talking to private equity groups, family offices, started talking to my lenders, and started talking to my mentors, anybody that wanted to hear about me. I wanted to tell them, here's my big thought. How do I do it? What do you think? How would I go about finding that right partner? And I actually thought I was going to scale this project on my own with debt financing. And then COVID hit, which is a three words that nowadays enter every conversation, right? So when COVID hit, coming out of it, I really saw an opportunity to really take advantage of some opportunity and movement and deal flow in Club Pilates and fitness in general. But at the same time, there was a reluctance among lenders to really get into service-based business in general, but throw fitness on that on top of that. So that's where I started thinking, now might be the time to really explore, private equity play and teaming up with the right partner to really execute on this strategy. The introduction was actually made from the franchisor. So they had a private equity group had reached out to them, and there was some initial just introductions, and I shared what I was doing, and they shared sort of some of their thoughts. And actually what I'm trying to do, just a roll up strategy within fitness and multi-unit franchising. There's somewhat of a trend of that going on. So you're starting to see it in, Orange Theory Fitness, you're seeing in Planet Fitness, you're seeing other fitness categories, set aside the fact that it's been done for years in food and retail. But really it's just trying to take that play and copy it and do our best at doing it. So that's how the introduction was. And really the biggest thing was making sure that we're both aligned on where we're going, how we want to get there. And the small things will take care of itself.
So I'm sure you had your own preconceived notions or ideas, what you thought it would look like working with private equity. What are some of the things that are actually different as you are now in it that you didn't realize it was going to be this easy or this hard, or this is how it actually works? Or are there any things that learnings that you've had along the way that you look back and like, boy, this is different?
Yeah, now, and keep in mind, I've only, you know, only only been involved with this new venture for going on 5 months, 4 or 5 months, so maybe six now. I don't know. Time flies. But yeah, so um, one of the interesting things is I see the value immensely in having the right private equity partner with you. And it doesn't have to be private equity, but the right equity partner, right? So there's a value to speed and having capital at the ready to deploy and to act on opportunities. But in addition to that, just the perspective of scaling businesses and being connected to the right people, being connected to other peers that I might want to start connecting with, just coming from an outsider. So, for example, most private equity folks might not have they might not have experience in fitness or the day to day of running a business, right? And that's something I've been doing for 15 years. But it's really refreshing to get somebody when I have conversations to just ask, why are you doing it that way, right? And why is it that and a lot of times the answer is, well, that's the way I've always done it. That's the way John Hewitt would say to do it. But having a partner that helps give you perspective and can actually back it up with their experience of, well, here's what we're seeing in the market. Here's what we're seeing with some Orange Theory fitnesses, and here's some of the challenges with scale risk and growing too fast. And here's some people you might want to connect with. Let's make an introduction. Let's get you together and create some new connections, some new relationships. To me, that has been really, really valuable. Just having that larger perspective and larger network to really leverage my growth with.
So if you didn't have them to give you that larger perspective and expand your network, what would you do today knowing the value in that? And this is not a pitch for my mastermind or anything like that. Like, because, there are things out there that you can go do that could help you get that if you weren't with private equity. So if you were not with private equity, yet you knew there was an immense value in having a network with people that think differently, think at a higher level, different types of background, and can help with strategy, what would you do to go find that?
Well, I think it's something that is a lesson I learned a long time ago. It's something you do really well. It's just you're constantly networking. You're constantly building that Rolodex, even though I don't think that even exists anymore in a real fashion. But I mentioned, back in early 2019, I was going to Vegas and going to random franchise conventions and conferences, right? And so just pushing that boundary, learning, trying to get connected with more and more folks, sharing what you want to do. That's the coolest thing to me is when I started sharing, here's where I want to be. Here's where I want to take this company. What are your thoughts? People were very helpful in sharing their feedback and introducing me to folks or saying, hey, this is somebody you might want to talk to. Right. So I think that's always a constant in my mind. And one of the things that I think has been very valuable in my growth and my journey is to always push that limit with networking and trying to learn more and watch podcasts or listen to podcasts like your own and constantly trying to improve yourself.
Here's an interesting thing with that. If you're listening to a podcast and there is a guest on there, don't reach out to the host of the podcast because they're getting reached out as a host all the time. Reach out to the guest that was on there. Say, hey, David, I heard you on the Franchise Secrets podcast. I love X, Y, and Z about what you said. You know, what advice would you have for this? Don't ask for a phone call. Don't ask for the stuff. Try to give them some value, or just thank them and slide into their DMs, slide in their email, and just start to build that relationship. If it's from a distance, and like you said, you went to some of these conferences, and I'm guessing it wasn't comfortable explaining your vision and putting it out there for the very first time, because it was a big goal, big vision, a BHAG. And you could, at least, and when I've been in those situations, I feel like, who am I to be able to have a big vision like this? And especially around people that this may not be a big vision to. And so you just put yourself out there, you get uncomfortable, and that's okay. And that's how you know that you're pushing yourself, because you are uncomfortable. Is that accurate? Like, did you get uncomfortable as you were doing some of that, or you just pretty confident and it was very easy for you?
Yeah, I would love for everything to be easy, but no, it's uncomfortable. Showing up, I remember going to one conference, and the first thing I recognized was, all right, this is a bunch of folks in food. And I remember realizing that, and I was like, all right, why did I, my first thought was, why did I spend my time and money to come out here? And do I even want to do this? I'm just going to skip this social hour, happy hour, and I'll just show up to the main speaker tomorrow and do whatever, right? Hang out at the pool. But, I had the discipline to actually, find those opportunities to make connections and to talk to folks. And, I think what I came away, this is sort of a joke, but what I came away with after that is, I definitely don't want to get into food. So if that's the price I paid to figure out that lesson ahead of time, then, that trip to Vegas was definitely worth it. I say that a little tongue in cheek, but I think being uncomfortable and pushing through obstacles, pushing through things that might not seem easy, I think you can always exit them and find some sort of lesson, some sort of benefit to you, even if it's not readily apparent. I think you can always look back and say, what, this helped me. The overall experience of it has helped me, and I'm glad I did it. But if you always sink into your happy place and don't force any uncomfortableness, then it's tough to grow, to be honest.
Yeah, there's no growth. There's no growth that happens in your fat, happy place where you're just comfortable. There's no growth that happens in there. And I just look at where I've grown the most over the last 5 years is just putting myself in those very uncomfortable situations. And I'm a pretty confident guy, but I would definitely get uncomfortable. Funny thing is, other people who I thought were very comfortable in those situations were uncomfortable. And I've seen them posted on social media about some of these events that I've been to. And they said they were shaking in their boots when they had to announce something or say something, and now they're speakers on the stages at some of these events. So it's like, you're not alone either. So anybody out there that is thinking about this and thinking Eric's got it all together, David's got it all together, they're confident, they know everybody, it hasn't always been that way. And we're comfortable in certain areas now, but there's still areas that we continue to push ourselves. So let's shift gears a little bit. 5-6 months into private equity, growing a significant business. What has changed in your mindset of growth or scale today versus, call it, 2 or 3 years ago?
Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, go even further back. I used to think the entire world revolved around January to April, right? So in the tax business, I thought that was the stuff, which it was, and I am forever.
That was our world back then. It was our world for sure.
It was definitely, and so, and then I got into Club Pilates, and you have your first unit and your second, and sometimes I got up to point where you have a handful of units, and you start thinking, wow, this is a really, really good business. It's throwing off good cash, and that's good. But I tell you, the interesting thing just over the last 5 months is there's always a bigger world out there. There's always folks that are doing it bigger and better. than what you think you're doing. And there's always more and more opportunity. And I tell you, one thing I think about pretty consistently is, and I think about it because I think it's important, but every day I feel like I am closer to my goal. And every day I feel like the path to that goal is a little bit clearer, right? And the clarity is something that's really exciting, right? So when you can see, okay, I see the path to getting there a little bit better than I did just yesterday or last week or last month or last year. And that's exciting, right? And, if it ever comes to a point where the path seems less and less clear, or I'm getting a little bit more confused, and that's just, it's definitely not something that I would be excited about, but it would be maybe a trigger to step back and say, okay, what's going wrong here? What's going sideways? Let's readjust and figure out how to get back on the right path. But I will tell you, the biggest thing that's opened my eyes is there's a whole nother world out there. And there's regardless of if it's Club Pilates or whatever, even outside of franchising, I think the lesson is there's opportunity there. Somebody's going to take it. Somebody's going to execute on it. And it's up to people like you and me and your listeners to really grab at it and make your own, make your own story, right? Create your own journey. Make it happen, overcome those obstacles. And to me, that's half of the fun.
Similar question, meaning as you've grown, different mindset, going from Liberties to a different company and growing across the nation. How has your leadership game changed? Like, how have you upped your leadership? How have you changed your leadership? What are some of the things that you've noticed about yourself, or maybe other people have noticed about you in regards to your leadership?
Great question. I do think that leadership is very key. I think you can cover up leadership deficits with small businesses and one or two units. I think when you try and scale and grow teams and get folks to join you on your journey, right? I think that's where leadership can really make an impact and have a difference. One of the things I think about a lot now is and I think it's probably comparable to leadership, but I think about how I want to manage. So the management style, right? And one of the big changes I've made over the years is sort of modeled after the 1 Minute Manager book, but really try and view things not as a top-down leader, but somebody that empowers and helps to support the folks at every level in our organization to be able to reach their personal goals, reach their business goals, to be able to make decisions and feel like they have the resources necessary to help me run our businesses. And so when I think about my leadership style, it really is how do I empower the people in my organization to reach their goals and reach our goals collectively, and also how do I engage better with folks? How do I create the right culture? One of my principles is to create a great place for customers to do business and for employees to work, right? So how do I create that better workplace? And so I think another piece of leadership is just being able to be really clear on what your vision is, what your mission, what your principles are, how you make decisions, how you want your company to behave, and really being an ambassador for that. And then just supporting all the people that come along for the ride and are helping you reach those goals, supporting them as long as you're aligned in those same directions. I think that's leadership. I think people like me might get more credit for success that might happen in my studios, for example. But really the credit is the fact that it's a great product, and the people that work in our studios are very passionate about Pilates. They care about our customers. And I think my small impact on that is working to create those opportunities, right? By opening new studios, acquiring existing studios, but also trying to just set a culture and a vision for an awesome place to spend their time every day.
What would some of your key managers say about you? They would say, David is what?
Oh my
In
goodness.
regards to your leadership style, your personality, and who you are. Like who do they say that you are? What would they say if I asked them?
Well, I don't know. I think that's a great question. You should probably ask them. Yeah,
Phase two.
I think they would probably say David cares. David has a high standard, and not on a personal, but David wants wants our customers to have a great experience, right? And we don't want to be average. We don't want to have just a normal experience like they may get at any other gym, right? So I would like for them to say that I care about the little things, that I want to have a great customer and employee experience. On the personality side, they'd probably say I'm probably don't have the best sense of humor, and but I don't know. It's I would tell you, I enjoy working with everybody that's on the team, and that's also a very rewarding. It's funny, and I know you've heard it in franchising. Sometimes there's the unicorn of franchises is people like us will say, how do we get a concept that has no employees, right? Let me find that magical business where there's no employees and just a check shows up in the mailbox every month on time, and we can go play golf. But I'm assuming by you shaking your head, you've heard that. So that misses the whole huge rewarding piece in my mind, that I've been able to be associated with folks in my tax offices that are now franchisees and own their own businesses, right? My vice president of operations with my Pilates studios was a teacher at our first studio in Raleigh. So she went from being a teacher to a manager to a regional manager to now VP of Ops. So it really is rewarding to see people grow and develop, and also to create relationships and get to know them and get to help support them in their growth.
Awesome. I love it. Let's shift gears a little bit into your appetite for risk, knowing what you know now about franchising, knowing what you know now about growing these different franchises, territory, franchise agreements, early stage brands, late stage brands, all of that. What is your tolerance for risk? What are you doing differently today as someone that has been in the industry for a while that you probably would have done earlier on? So what's different about your risk mitigation strategy today?
Yeah. So I think it's a relative question. So risk to me might mean something different than somebody else, right? So you might talk to the accountant that's been working for an accounting firm for the last 20 years, and they think just the fact of starting a new business is too much risk for them, right? To me and you, it's something that's what we did yesterday for breakfast, right? So setting that aside, on the risk side, I view risk in, I always try to assign what would the worst case scenario be. I try to make sure that I don't make mistakes, or I don't make decisions that would be fatal. I'm okay with taking risk and making decisions and making moves if I feel that that's the right move, but I want to make sure I avoid the big bad ones, right? And one of the things, let's take that to this current project I'm doing. When I scale at a speed that I'm growing now, for example, I'll close on 5 studios here in the next month. And when you scale quickly, one of the risks you face is integration risk as well as scale risk, right? So can you support the number of of studios as well at scale as you were when they were 2 to 5 or whatever. The other on the integration risk is something I mentioned at the very beginning of the episode, which was, how do you transition and get somebody to buy into your culture when they've been associated with the previous owner for the number of years? How do you get processes, buy in on new processes? How do you implement change? Things like that. But in this scenario, to me, the risk is not, those are acceptable risks to me, right? Because I sort of feel if I grow too fast, then it's my role and my job to see sort of the leading indicators of, or I don't know, trailing, whatever, leading indicators of, all right, we're failing here. There's some cracks here in integration risk. There's some cracks in scaling risk, and let's step back and let's figure out how to solve it and get ahead of it. I think the real risk, and something I'm doing in the way I judge it, is I want to make sure opportunity risk, right? So it would be very easy to do a strategy where I'm buying up maybe underperforming assets, right? But to me, that puts a third big risk, right? You're having to not only deal with integration risk and scale risk, you're dealing with having to figure out how to turn entire business units from failing to success. And so to me, that's a risk where you can really get upside down real fast. And it can also participate in that 80-20 Pareto principle, where if you do that, you're always going to have those dogs that could really bring down the entire organization. So that's a risk that I want to make sure I'm really aware of, that I don't make future decisions or go into a turnaround project to where that opportunity risk, right? Where it can be a decision that is fatal to the rest of my business. So does that make sense? I mean, there's
100%. I also see, now I have some inside information. So I love all that, but I have some inside information on you, and you have inside information because of your connections now out there. And you're able to make calculated decisions based on information that you have, that going back to you as a first time franchisee, you didn't have the knowledge, you didn't have access to the information. And as you grow your empire, you're growing very strategically, and how you're doing that, whether it's the brands or the markets or whatever it is. So I think part of your risk mitigation is just access to the information that you have. And it's not like other people could get access to the same kind of information, but it's because of where you've put yourself, the people that you're around, you know things that the average person just doesn't know. So does that make sense?
Yeah, keep saying that. Keep telling me I know stuff that other people don't know. That's pretty cool.
And if you want to know what David knows, you can join our top secret mastermind, where we can show you how to make money without taking any risk and blah, blah, blah. Right. No, and I've just seen it. And even I think just listening to you, you're very thoughtful in the things that, as how you present what you've done. And so, it's fun to see you grow. I want to wrap up here in a second, but first, people are probably thinking David's a unicorn. He got lucky because he's got private equity now. Now he's got all this money. He could have done it on his own. He had a great life before private equity. Trust me, I know he has a fantastic life. And he's working hard. So this isn't just, all fun and games. Like, he's working towards this goal. You don't make you don't have $100 million company by just, watching other people do all the work. So what is a day in the life?
Good question. So it really has changed over the last number of months. So I am traveling a lot more. But a typical day, I have an office in downtown Nashville. So I'll get up in the morning, make sure I see my kids before they head off to school, grab a cup of coffee, try and drink 1 cup at the house. And then I head off to the office, always with that second cup of coffee. But anyway, I have an office in downtown. I go there. I usually work until about 2 o'clock at the office. Anywhere between 2 and 3, I like to come back I get in my car and I'll head back to the house. I'll stop and get my third cup of coffee, Dunkin' Donuts. And I try to make my brainstorming calls, catch up calls, networking calls. I try to make those both while I'm driving, as well as that 3 to 6 o'clock time frame every afternoon. So I'll sit on the porch or inside if it's raining, and I'll just get some stuff done on the phone and take care of a lot of things like that. In the mornings when I'm in my office, I try to do the the important but non-urgent administrative type things that I need to do. I try to do those first off. And then my creative time during the day tends to be once I've gotten those juices flowing. So after that first hour or two, I like to do a lot of the creative type things that are necessary, where I'm having a planning call with somebody on my team. I'm talking to different folks about different ideas, and talking to potential sellers, trying to build the pipeline, coming up with ways to grow the business. So that's a typical day for me when I'm in Nashville. But I'm traveling probably every 2 to 3 weeks. I'll have 2 to 3 to 4 days of travel and I try to batch that, right? Where I'll leave on a Monday to Dallas and spend some time in Dallas and go from there to Houston, and then from Houston to back home, or I'll go to Orlando. And last week I was in Tampa on Tuesday with meetings, had a hockey game with Sean York, who
Yep.
Went to a hockey game with him Tuesday night, and then had some meetings the rest of the day, the following day in Orlando, and then flew home. So try to be efficient with what I'm trying to do, try to pre-plan, which is also a big thing that I find value in, is to really be thoughtful in planning my day, thoughtful in planning the week, thoughtful in planning the month, thoughtful in planning the year, right? And I think if you're deliberate about what you want to accomplish, and then back into all the pieces that it takes to get there, and then you check up on a shorter time basis, like a month, a week, and a day, it's almost hard to not be productive.
Well, I love it. I've no doubt that you're going to reach your goal, because I know other people that are reaching their crazy goals. And I'll open up Entrepreneur Magazine and I'll see friends of mine in there. I'll open up Multi-Unit Magazine, which, by the way, is a good magazine for people. Multi-Unit Franchisee, a great magazine. And I would imagine one of these days I'm going to see your mug on that magazine, or in that magazine, on the and your story. And I'm dead serious about that.
I've been in it twice.
No way.
Yeah.
But not
on Entrepreneur. That's the next level, right?
All right. Entrepreneur is the next level, but Multi-Unit Magazine twice. That's impressive. For what brands?
Both the Club Pilates. Yeah. So first one was just a feature on being multi-unit in both Liberty and Club Pilates, and growing with them. And this most recent was they covered the development deal I just signed, the second development deal I just signed with Club Pilates Corp.
I'm going to have to go back and look at some past issues to see your mug there and be like, I know that guy. So, man, I'm so proud of you, what you've done. I'm so glad we got to be friends over the years, and it's seriously extremely impressive what you're doing. People that don't know it, you're just a normal guy like the rest of us, and your story should inspire others. So thanks for coming on, my friend.
Awesome. Thanks. And back at you. I've always enjoyed our conversations. I've enjoyed getting to know you over the years, and really value your input. And I know folks that follow you and interact with you see the value in your knowledge and experience. So really appreciate the time, and best of luck to you.
Thanks a bunch, buddy. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Franchise Secrets Podcast. Whether you're watching or listening, please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and to whatever channel you're listening on. If you want my help with anything from buying a franchise to franchising your business, please visit franchisesecrets.com.